Transportation with Jason Ferbrache, our Director of EMBARK and Public Transportation. So we'll let him make his presentation.
So good morning, Vice Mayor, Council. Pleased for the opportunity this morning to present the FY20 budget for the Public Transportation and Parking Department. We'd like to take a minute just to recognize a couple of staff that were very helpful in preparing the budget presentation and the overall budget document. We have Melissa Rousey here. She's our Financial Services Manager, as well as Michael Scroggins here, who's working the technology, and also would like to thank the Budget Office for all their help getting us to this point. So as we start the presentation this morning, we really have it arranged in a way to familiarize Council with our family of services. And we're going to do that first by looking at who we are, take a look at what we've done, and then some survey data that'll give you a sense of what people are saying about us. We'll transition over to our 4 areas of focus, which are tied to the issues that we've identified in our strategic business plan. And then we'll finish with just a summary look at our overall budget for transportation and parking services. So our mission is to provide public transportation and downtown parking services to the residents and visitors of the greater Oklahoma City area, so they can experience friendly, convenient, safe, and affordable transit and parking services. And in addition to managing downtown parking, we are a multimodal transit agency, and extremely pleased with the ability to add an additional mode of transportation this year with the launch of the Oklahoma City Streetcar. Looking back at what we've done this year with the resources provided by Council in our budget, we've had a very busy year. We started our fiscal year with the addition of an additional night route, Route 22, which serves Martin Luther King all the way up to 63rd Street, connecting Metro Tech, the zoo, Remington Park, Oklahoma City County Health Campus that's up there. And so we continue that incremental improvement on night service. We finished a big capital improvement project with the Sheridan Walker parking garage. I'm sure you've driven by the location. You've seen the mural on the outside of the building. We're really pleased with how the mural turned out, but the capital project was much more involved than that. We ended up renovating some elevator cabs. We redid the stairwells. We restriped the garage. We repainted all the painted surfaces. Added energy-efficient LED lighting, and so we wrapped that project up in September. And then, of course, in December was very exciting, I think, for the entire city, and that was the launch of the Oklahoma City Streetcar service. We had a great opening weekend. Again, just as a reminder, that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we provided over 20,000 passenger trips during our opening weekend. And then in January, another huge day for us, January 27th, the launch of Sunday bus service in Oklahoma City. You can see a familiar face down there on the bottom right. And we appreciate all the support from Council and the Board of Trustees in helping bring that Sunday service to fruition. So what are people saying? We got a couple of survey results to share with you. And this is data from the Importance Satisfaction Index that is shared with Council by the consultant that does the resident survey each year. So you'll probably be familiar with this information. But just as a reminder, when residents are asked, what's important to them and what their satisfaction levels are, we all know the condition of city streets is by far the most important thing that comes to light in that resident survey. It's also one of the areas where there's the least amount of satisfaction. And so that translates to that important satisfaction ranking of that being, first. So how does that translate, or how does that work for public transit? When you follow that same methodology down to public transportation in terms of important satisfaction rating, we're number 3 on the list. So 24%, almost a quarter of the respondents believe that public transportation is important. Only 20%, or about 1 in 5, are satisfied with where it's at. So again, I think the incremental improvements and the resources that have been provided to public transit are certainly in line with resident expectations. We also do a customer survey each year to find out how we're performing with our customer base, those that actually use our system. And over here on the left, you can see survey results from February of 2019. We just wrapped this survey up. We received 70% of the respondents indicated they were either very satisfied or satisfied with the EMBARK bus service. And one of the things we're really pleased with this year especially is the very satisfied category there, where we have 36% of the respondents saying they're very satisfied. That's the highest percentage of very satisfied responses we've received. In fact, you have to go all the way back to 2015 when we had just launched our system realignment to even come close to that, and even then it was 30%. So we're really pleased with the results there. We also always ask our customers, what kind of improvements would you like to see in the transit service? And you can see here by looking at the numbers in the bar graph on your right that more weeknight buses running until midnight, so more night service, and more frequent service on the weekends are really the top two things that our customers are looking for. But really followed very, very closely, I'd say a close second, is more shelters at stops and more frequent service on the weekdays. And then later weekend service kind of rounds out the top 5 desires of our customers for improved transit. So we'll shift our discussion now to really kind of our strategic business plan and how it's integrated with our budget. As you'll recall, the public transportation parking, just like every city department, we do engage in a strategic business planning process. We update that on a regular basis. And one of the most helpful things, I think, for us as a department through that strategic business planning process is identifying our issues. And the issues are really the major challenges that are facing the department in the coming years. And so we get an opportunity as a planning team to recognize those and figure out how are we going to deal with them before they become unmanageable issues. And so for us, we've really narrowed it to 4 areas of focus, or 4 issues. The first one really speaks to the health of our assets and equipment, or our state of good repair. The wellness or well-being of our employees ties directly to our ability to develop our workforce. We want to grow in a manner, but we want to grow in such a way that it's sustainable. And then really any attempt to successfully deliver parking or transportation services has to be built on the relationships that we have within the community. So that rounds out our 4th area of focus. So we'll look at each one of these in a little bit of a detail, again, to give council some context into what we hope to accomplish and plan with the proposed budget. So the first one here that we'll look at is our state of good repair. And just wanted to take a minute to recognize our employees that maintain our fleet and our facilities. We've done, with our staff, in my opinion, we've done a remarkable job in being able to bring a lot of the repairs, particularly for our bus fleet, in-house. We very rarely have to send anything off-site to have repaired anymore. And so again, that speaks to, I think, the quality of our staff and the expertise of our mechanics. And keeping in mind, too, that most of these individuals work during the middle of the night in order to have buses ready to go by 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning. So you guys are obviously welcome to come tour the facility at any time, but I will tell you the maintenance facility during the day is a little empty because everybody works in the middle of the night. So looking at some specific items related to the state of good repair, I am pleased to report that the age of our fleet, our fixed route bus fleet, average age is now 6.6 years. So that means we have no buses that are operating past their useful life. And it's really a tremendous improvement from where we were just a few years ago. In fact, when I presented the budget in FY16, we were actually looking at 18 buses, or 31% of our fleet, that was past its useful life. And useful life on a heavy-duty transit bus is 12 years. And so you can imagine the condition of a bus after 12 years, and then if you're running it past those 12 years, it's certainly not the best experience for the customer, and eventually your maintenance costs start catching up with you. So again, through some competitive grant programs, the support of the council, the support of the COPPA Board of Trustees with our capital plan, we've really been able to make a dent in improving the condition of our fleet. Also want to mention shelters and stop improvements, and this is a big issue for us. It's a priority. We work on it to the extent that resources and staff expertise allow. Within this last fiscal year, we've actually improved 38 different stop locations, and we've installed 22 new shelters. And when I say a stop improvement, that's basically a concrete pad, some type of connecting sidewalk, and in a lot of cases, maybe an ADA curb cut. And this is really an opportunity to thank the MAPS office and Public Works for all they do to support our bus stop improvement program. As you know, MAPS has built a lot of sidewalks. Public Works, we coordinate with their project managers, and we work through these lists of shelter and bus stop improvement locations, and we just really couldn't do it without them. In fact, we have, in addition to what you see on the slide, we have 18 more locations in process for improvement, with another 23 shelters that we'll be installing. And so that'll round out this current phase of bus stop improvements that we're working on. And then moving into next year, our plan is to be at least that aggressive or more in continuing to add shelters and improve stops. And then just quickly, I'll mention a signage project that we have on the off-street parking side of our operations. This is a rendering of what a public parking sign would look like attached to the Arts District Garage. It's the same type sign that we have currently attached to the Sheridan Walker Garage. And we're doing this for mainly to create awareness of the amount of public parking that is in the downtown area. I'll speak later about a parking study that we have begun. And in talking with some of the stakeholders, as we started that parking study, we shared this concept of publicizing the public parking, and we received a lot of support for that because business owners still hear, when people come downtown that, folks don't think there's enough parking or they don't know where to park. In a lot of cases, they may not know they can even park in one of our public parking garages. So we really think this will help alleviate that myth that I think exists that there's no parking downtown. So on the next slide here, this is moving into our area of focus, wellness or workforce development. And I love the picture here. This is 3 of our operations staff members, and 2 of those individuals just recently have been promoted to supervisor positions. So in terms of developing our workforce, the young lady on the left there and the gentleman on the right are both now route supervisors, having started with us as bus operators. But our real focus this year with workforce development was hiring and retaining employees. With the addition of Sunday bus service, we had new additional bus operator positions to fill. We had some mechanic positions to fill. We had service worker positions to fill. Because now that we're a 7-day operation, we actually had to add a shift, and we had to fill additional bus operator positions. So in order to do that, we had to be pretty aggressive and pretty strategic on our hiring. Since December, we've actually hired 38 new employees, and our current vacancy rate for bus operators is 2.5%. So that's pretty remarkable for us in terms of being able to fill bus operator positions. And if anybody's ever had to recruit operators or drivers, particularly ones with commercial driver's license, you'll know how hard that segment of the workforce is to attract. One of the things I want to mention is an innovative approach we took this year to trying to fill particularly those bus operator positions. And this was an idea that really originated within our safety and training department, and that was providing free Cdl classes to the community on Saturdays. So what we would do is we would publicize through Michael and his team, social media and some paid advertisements that we're doing these free Cdl classes. We would help an individual get their permit. So that's preparing for the test, getting their permit. That's the first step in the Cdl process. This was really beneficial twofold. Is one, it got people in the door where we could talk to them about our organization. And it also kind of helped us be able to pre-screen some people right before they really got into the whole application and interview process. So through those Cdl classes, that was really a key in filling our positions. I'm looking at the next area of focus. This is our growth area of focus. And again, we can look at growth in a lot of different ways, all the way from service span to revenue miles, but we do like to focus on ridership. And so we'll take a look at several different ridership slides. The first one here is our night bus service. And you can see, looking at the bar chart, this is our cumulative ridership for each one of the years. The line graph that you see is our riders per service hour. Recall, we started our night service in FY15 with 2 routes. We now have 6 routes in operation through FY19. We anticipate finishing the year with over 100,000 passenger trips on those 6 routes that are operating until midnight. The next slide here is our total weekday ridership, and we actually have this, the bar chart you see actually shows our average ridership per day. Even with the decline that you see in average ridership, we're still providing over 10,000 trips a day. That has us on pace, even through the end of fiscal year 19, to finish around 3 million trips during the year. So again, looking at the downward trend, there's still a lot of people within our community that are using our bus service to get to where they need to go. The only thing I might share with you on this is, FY16 was definitely our peak for average riders per day. We've seen the decline even from FY18 to FY19. We're looking at about a 3% decline. This is consistent with what we're seeing across the country with bus ridership. There's lots of theories and opinions out there on why we're seeing that. But what we did is we went back and we looked and we compared to our peer cities to kind of get a sense of, well, what's the ridership doing there? When you look at our peer cities, the overall average decline is about 5.5%. So again, just to give you some context, we have tapered off a bit, but not to the extent that we're seeing in some of our peer cities. So our next slide is Sunday ridership, and we've only been in operation really 3 months, unless you count that first Sunday in January. We're averaging over 2,500 passenger trips on a Sunday, which is exactly where, in our opinion, we should be. That's about half of our Sunday ridership, and there's been a few consultants within the industry that have let us know that a good rule of thumb is about half the ridership you'll see about half the ridership on Sunday that you'll experience on a Saturday. And so again, I think it just speaks to the fact that we put the new service out there, our community embraces it very quickly. You'll notice that spike in March. We actually had 5 Sundays in March, so it's really pretty consistent around 2,500 trips on a Sunday. And then looking at streetcar ridership, we talked a little bit about opening weekend. Get to the slide here. Okay, there we go, streetcar ridership. So we talked a little bit about opening weekend. We can also see that we had strong ridership, extremely strong ridership through the first 2 months of the service, December and January. So I won't go into all the numbers, but you can see there the dark green is cumulative weekday ridership per month. The light green is our cumulative weekend, and then the orange is our total overall ridership for that month. December was our largest month, of course, with over 73,000 passenger trips, followed by just over 48,000 in January. And then we do see a dip in ridership in February. We have a few things going there. One is we started charging a fare in February. I think we'd all probably agree that kind of the newness of the service had wore off by the time February arrived. And then in addition, that was when the cold weather kind of hit. So we saw a drop in February, a really strong rebound in March, percentage-wise, up to 33,000 trips. Spring break was a great week for us. We actually had one Saturday in March where we provided 3,900 passenger trips in one Saturday. And then April is looking to finish strong as well, nearly 30,000 trips. We did over 6,800 trips just this last weekend of the Arts Festival and the Memorial Marathon. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, over 6,800 trips. So we're very pleased with our ridership for April as well, and anticipate that to be, those numbers to be continued on hopefully throughout the summer as we have nice weather and additional events. So looking at some of our alternative transportation, I'll just mention quickly, we do provide transit service along the Oklahoma River. Up in the top left, you can get a sense of what our ridership is there with the 3 65-foot vessels that provide transit service from Meridian to Regatta Park and the Bricktown Landing. We're estimating FY19 to finish at over 13,000 trips, a little bit ahead of last year, but not quite where we were our record year in FY17, where we had over 16,000 trips. Looking at our Spokies bike share ridership, again, FY19, we're expected to finish at just under 11,000 trips, down slightly from the previous year, and we attribute that decline mainly to the competition that we now have from the scooters that we see downtown. So looking forward to some growth items, we'll talk a little bit about our bus rapid transit first. As you know, we were awarded a build grant in 2018. I am pleased to report that that project continues to progress. We have satisfied the first step of the environmental process and submitted our basically our categorical exclusion documents to the FTA for review. We're in the process of selecting an engineering firm to help us with final design. And then again, as we continue with the project, construction will begin in 21 with service anticipated for 2023. And again, that's a coordinated effort between not only us, but the planning department and Public Works as well in trying to bring that service online. Included in the proposed budget is additional funding for holiday bus service. There's 6 holidays that, with the approval of the budget, will now be able to provide bus service. The bus service that we're going to offer on holidays is going to be the equivalent of the frequency and service span that we now offer on Saturdays. And so we'll now have buses operating on New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas. And I think this really just goes to support Council's priority to develop a transportation system that works for all residents, because we know that a lot of our customers, they rely on public transportation to get to where they need to go. They have activities and events they want to attend on the holidays, not to mention the fact that a lot of our customer base, they have to work on the holidays. So we want to be able to make sure we have that transportation to get them there. So talking a little bit about parking, I mentioned a downtown parking study. We have engaged Kimley Horn and Associates to help us with a parking study of the central city area. The boundaries of the parking study are basically Classen on the west, I-235 on the east, so it will include Bricktown. The northern boundary is 13th, and then all the way south to the Oklahoma City Boulevard. Again, although we're more or less kind of taking the lead on the project, we are coordinating and within our team, we have planning, the Alliance for Economic Development, and the city manager's office all contributing to this study. So what the consultant is really going to do is do an inventory of the parking system downtown, both public and private, help us get a sense of where parking, if any additional parking needs to go, help us get some recommendations on our on-street parking management process. And so we're working through that process right now. We plan to have some preliminary recommendations towards the end of the summer. And really, this will kind of be the framework or the map that we use in making parking decisions moving forward, just like we use the core-to-shore parking study to help us determine the size of the convention center parking garage. And speaking of the convention center parking garage, here's a quick timeline of where we're at with that. We are in the process of completing the design. As you know, the garage is being located on a site that was owned by OG&E, so we expect the demo and the cleanup of that site to be complete in June. We'll be bidding the project and beginning construction this fall, with completion estimated to be around the same time as the convention center wraps up its construction. So our last area of focus here is relationships, and I can't emphasize again how important it is to engage our community, and we have a great team of staff that does that. Here's a great picture of some EMBARK staff at probably an open streets event. We're looking forward to the One OKC event coming up, I believe, on May 18th. We'll be participating in that. And so we did have lots of opportunities to listen to the community, particularly with the launch of the streetcar service. We participated in a lot of what we call the track meet events. So we took the streetcar vehicles, introduced them to the community through events like the Brick or Treat, the Midtown Walkabout, the Lights on Broadway. We had some more formalized listening sessions, whether it be the BRT public meeting or some of the engagement we did with the ADA community on familiarizing them with the streetcar. We also had opportunities to engage the community. We, again, were a regular participant in Open Streets. We continue the Love the Loops campaign for businesses along the Oklahoma City streetcar route. That's where businesses can sign up free to become part of the Love the Loops partner program, and then we do some cooperative publicity there, promoting both the streetcar and the businesses and the neighborhoods. And then, of course, we've mentioned the Sunday service and streetcar launch. We had some partnering opportunities this year, as we always do, but I wanted to mention a few of them. We're very pleased with our work with the Homeless Alliance and ability to serve that facility better by rerouting one of our bus routes. The Curbside Chronicle played an important role in the launch of the streetcar. The COPPA Board of Trustees has provided some additional bus passes to the OKC Drug Court program to help those individuals that need transportation be able to complete that program in a more timely manner. The Hall Pass program, we haven't talked about that in a while, but that is the free bus pass for any student that is enrolled in an Oklahoma City public school high school. We continue to see some pretty good usage of the Hall Pass program. Through this year, we've actually provided over 30,000 trips for high school students. Last year, we were at about 34,000, so we're on pace to see about those numbers again this year by the time it's wrapped up. And then Road Scholars, this is our field trip program. Again, free public transportation for particularly school groups, but other nonprofits. We've actually provided 25 Road Scholar trips this year, 475 participants in those programs. We have another 12 that are scheduled through the end of the year, and that number will probably grow. And then we've also partnered this year providing additional bus passes to the United Way for some of the agencies that they work with. Okay, so as we wrap up and look at our budget, we certainly love the budget book cover this year. We think that's probably the best budget book cover we've seen. But looking at our overall COTPA budget, I want to just make a note here. When you're looking in your budget document, and you can find our budget again on page C145 of the budget book. When you look at that budget document, what you're going to see is the city's portion of funding that supports public transportation. But as you know, public transportation is really overseen by the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority, so the city funding along with some federal funding, state funding, that all goes into one budget to support the total amount of services. So what I have here that I'm showing you is the total budget for all parking and transportation services for our community. And this is the COTPA proposed budget of $42,716,552. So you can look at the pie chart here, and you can see clearly that most of that funding goes to the providing bus transit service. That's 71% of our budget, or over $30 million. Our parking budget is 14% of our overall combined budget at just under $6 million. And keep in mind, too, that with our off-street parking program, there is no general fund money, there is no tax dollars that go into supporting the municipal parking garages. Customers, I should say, that use our service, whether they're monthly contract parkers or event parkers, that revenue is what pays for the expenses of the system. Our streetcar makes up 12% of our budget, or just over $5 million. Our ferry service that I mentioned earlier is just under $1 million at 2% of our budget, and then our bike share is at $226,000. So that's our combined budget for expenses, and then we have various funding sources that support both the transit operations and then funding sources that support parking operations. So the funding sources that support parking are here on this graph, and you can see that most of our revenue comes from that monthly contract parker. 46%, or just about $2.7 million, come from those people that park in our garages day in and day out, have a monthly parking contract. Event parking is just over $2 million. That makes up 34% of our funding sources. Our daily or transient revenue is about 13% of our revenue, at just over $700,000. And then we do have other revenues around $400,000 that go to support the parking system. And then when we look at funding sources for transit, again, our total transit budget is just over $36 million, with $23 million, or 63% of that budget, being supported by the city's general fund. And so that's what you should see in your budget document. We do have federal funding that supports transit in Oklahoma City. We have right around $7.7 million, or 21% of our revenue comes from federal grants. Fare revenue makes up $3.2 million, or right around 9% of our overall funding sources. State revenue, which has been flat for as long as I can remember at just about $1 million, makes up 3% of our budget. And then we have other revenue sources of about $1.7 million or 4% of our budget. And so that's how the transportation budget is supported within our community. So as far as major changes go, and this is the last slide I have for you this morning, but we'll finish with our major changes. We've already mentioned holiday bus service. That was an addition of $184,000. Sunday streetcar service, it's really a continuation of the level of service that we're providing now, but we'll continue that throughout the next fiscal year. That was an addition of $215,000. And then one of the things we didn't really talk about, but I can just mention briefly, is we really retooled our safety and training department. We've added a chief safety officer as well as some support staff for our safety and training department. And this is going to have us positioned to meet some new, or should say some coming FTA requirements in terms of implementing safety management systems, developing a public transportation agency safety plan. And one of the things that has impacted us is because we operate a rail system or a fixed guideway system, that puts us in a category with the FTA that's consistent with a lot of the larger transit agencies. So obviously you heard in our mission statement, we want to provide safe service. We have a new set of guidelines related to safety, and so now we're more than prepared to meet those in the coming years. And so with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Jason, thank you for your presentation. Seeing no questions, I'll vote.
I do have some questions. Thank you so much for this. This was really helpful. I had a few questions, just sort of, I guess, kind of technical questions about some of the numbers. So there was a slide with your customer survey from February of this year. Is that just bus, or are you doing that survey on streetcar, ferry service? Or is that just the bus?
Yeah. So this is just bus.
Okay.
We did do one for streetcar, but don't have that included.
And then on the streetcar, looking at ridership, I'm curious how that ridership is measured. Because I know, like, I get on the bus and, like, show my pass or put my pass in the fare box, and the operator pushes a button, and I assume that's getting tallied up somehow. But I was curious because when I've been on the streetcar, you just walk on, and I've never had anyone check my pass. So I'm just curious how that ridership gets measured.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. We measure ridership consistent with how ridership is measured within the industry, and that is by using automated passenger counters. So they're basically
Like a
sensors
sensor.
above the doors that can detect when people board and alight.
Gotcha.
So the other thing I mentioned about that is part of our systems integrated testing, of course, is testing the accuracy of those automated passenger counters. And ultimately, we'll use that ridership to report to NTD, the National Transit Database,
Okay.
which eventually will impact grant funding. So
Okay.
great question. Thank you for asking
that's
that.
super helpful. And then, I just wanted to say I really appreciate all of the work that EMBARK has done to invest in our bus service, particularly seeing that the Sunday service ridership is like, oh, I can go places on Sundays now. Yeah. And lots of other people, like you said, with holiday service, I think will be huge for people accessing employment and having that reliable source of transit. So thank you.
And then I just want to echo Councilwoman Hammond. And then just looking at this photo I took of the data you provided, just want to make sure I am understanding this correctly, that when we did a citizen survey asking what improvements the residents would like to see to our transit system, they said more frequent service on weekends, weekdays, and running later. I am reading that correctly.
That is from our customer survey. So that's when we...
The people who are using it right now.
That's right.
When do we talk to, I know we do, because I serve on COP, but I'm curious, the choice riders, the people out and about who own a car and have a choice whether to take public transportation, what do they say would make them ride this system?
Well, we engage the non-riders in a couple different ways. One is we have a few questions within the general resident survey that the city does each and every year. And then every other year, we do our own non-rider survey. We ask several questions about their inclinations to use the system and what would make the system more attractive to them. I can't recall all the questions, but we do ask them about, for example, the availability of covered stops, the frequency of the bus, things like that. So then they will respond, yes, this particular factor would or would not, make me more inclined to ride the bus. And typically what we find is, it's kind of consistent with what we see from our own customers. People want, safe, protected places to wait to catch the bus. And then generally frequency is, that's the top.
And just in case someone's tuning into Channel 20 for the first time, when you say frequency, would you say what that means and where we are right now, weekday versus weekend, and what the industry standard is for frequency?
Well, yeah, so frequency is basically how often a bus comes by, your stop. Right now we're at about 30-minute frequency on almost all routes, and thanks to the council and the COPPA Board of Trustees, we've worked really hard to get to that level of frequency. In some more robust transit systems, you'll see frequency in the neighborhood of 15 minutes. Obviously, the more frequent it becomes, the more convenient it is, the more predictable it is, right? You don't have to worry about a schedule. It's just like the streetcar. If you know a bus is coming by every 15 minutes or every 20 or whatever the number is. So...
And then I just want to, again, applaud EMBARK and the council members who've come before me who invested in Sunday bus service and improving the frequency over the years. You all are doing a lot of wonderful work.
Okay, thank you,
Yes, sir.
Jason.
Thank you.
Seeing